Hi, everyone. We are live. Good to see you all here today. Definitely want to know where everybody is calling in from. So feel free to drop a little note in the chat. I see Jacob saying hi. Hi, Jacob. Nice to see you. Okay, so welcome to State of RxJS. So excited to do this. I'm going to go ahead and present my slides really quickly. Let's see. State of RxJS. There we go. All right. Wanted to go ahead and thank the team over at This Dot. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do so many state of events. So thank you, team, for helping get this amazing panel together to talk about RxJS. If you didn't know, This Dot, we actually just released workshops this year. So we actually did a bunch of new ones. So we have like Svelte trainings, Vue 3 trainings. We did a quick training, but if you want a modern React training, there's one coming up tomorrow and it's on sale for $99. So go check it out. Upcoming events. If you love Angular Office Hours is happening May 16th. We have a monthly mentoring women in tech. So if you know women in tech or are a woman in tech, come hang out with us for an hour just to hang out. State of Headless CMS is also coming up May 23rd. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet. I'm not currently on Blue Sky, and I am not currently on, well, actually, I am on Mastodon, and you can follow me, but am I really there? And I'm joined by my co-host and RxJS core team lead,
Ben Lesh. She trolls me every time. Sometimes she says my name and sometimes she makes me say it. But yeah, it's there. Tracy, I had this thought like about your headless CMS, like anything that you do with that, you should do the state of headless things on like Halloween or something.
That's true. State of headless CMS. Yeah, that'd be cute.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea. I love the idea.
Get it organized. I mean, the logos and stuff would be amazing.
Yes. You can follow Ben actually on Blue Sky. And if you have an invite for Blue Sky, I'm looking for one. Slide into my DMs.
I don't have one yet.
I know. So whoever out there is listening, please come and give me an invite. We are joined by some awesome people today. Mladen, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm the RxJS core team member, and I'm coming from Europe, from Banja Luka, from Bosnia.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. And Moshe.
Yeah, hi. I'm Moshe. Great being here. I'm also a RxJS core member. I'm in New York, and yeah.
Doing fun stuff at Netflix over with Jay. Previous RxJS lead at Google. Love everything that you've done for the RxJS team and the community. Thank you so much. Okay, and last but not least, Marco.
Hey everyone, my name is Marko Stanimirovic. I'm a core member of NGRX team, GD in Angular, and also from time to time I'm organizing Angular Belgrade meetups. Yeah, and you can probably guess I'm from Belgrade, Serbia.
Nice.
Glad to be here.
Oh, we have two Serbians.
Yeah.
Do you guys hang out in your free time?
Yeah, sometimes when Mladen comes to Belgrade.
Nice. I love it. So if you need a place where people are doing RxJS, just go to Serbia. Hi, Alex. Good to see you. We see Alex in the chat over there. Oh, thank you for joining. Okay. Well, we're going to move right on to the agenda. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my slides right there. If you have any questions as we're going through this, feel free to pop them in the chat. And we will try to answer all of them. But, we wanted to hand the mic over to Ben. And Ben, maybe you can start off by just giving us like a state of RxJS.
Well, sure. The first thing I would like to go over is if you've been hiding under a rock for like a year and a half, RxJS version 7, like especially starting like around 7.4, there were some updates in there. But the long and short of it is everyone that's still on version 6 is really behind. They should try to catch up because version 7 is about half the size. Like if you were to include the entire kitchen sink, it's about half the size of version 6. Where version 8 that we're working on now is going to reduce the size even further. And about version 7.4, there are some performance updates where the hot path code there improved, the speed improved up to like 30-fold. So really, really important that you stay updated with that sort of stuff. For RxJS 8, so RxJS 8, we're already publishing alpha versions of it. If you npm install @next, so RxJS @next, you'll get the latest alpha version. There's not as many breaking changes as there's been with previous versions. The major breaking changes that you'll see is that we're removing all of the long deprecated APIs. So some of these APIs have been deprecated for almost 5 years, 6 years, I think, in some cases. So we're finally removing a bunch of those. And that, of course, is making the code faster because there's fewer branches of code to follow, and it's making the code smaller because we're removing code. Other things that are worth talking about for this, there's a lot of there's a lot of open discussions right now. There's a lot of things that we want people to try out in the alpha version of RxJS. Most notably, I would love to see people try using for await loops and that sort of thing to subscribe to observables. That's something that's you're actually able to do in version 8 as we implemented async iterable. Async iterable is something that we implemented because I had a library out called RxJS for await, and that got a lot of traction, got a lot of usage, and we could see there was 4 different ways you could convert an observable to an async iterable with that library, and we could see that the majority of people subscribe to it in one particular way, which is to get one value at a time. And that behavior works an awful lot like a concat map. So what happens when you subscribe to an observable with for await, it basically looks like for await value of some observable, and inside of that for await loop, it's going to execute to completion before getting the next value that's buffered up. So it's a lot like a concat map. All of the values that it gets get buffered until you consume them all, or if the consumer is going faster than you get them, it'll wait for the next value to arrive. But it's really interesting. You can also unsubscribe, so to speak, cancel things by just breaking that loop. So it's a really interesting way to consume observables that kind of uses the platform, so to speak, and might work really well with other people's async await usage, which as many know, I have other opinions on that, but it's available, and I personally find it useful. The other stuff that we've got coming down the pipe, I'm going to try to bring up some of the discussions here. Share screen. I want to share my whole screen. My whole screen's huge. Can I just share a tab? Yes, I can. Sweet. Sharing a tab. All right. So hopefully everybody can see this okay.
Can you make it a little bigger?
Yeah, of course.
Pretty teensy.
Better?
Okay, right. Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's a lot of discussions. One of the ones that's going back and forth right now is I really am trying to get to where we can expose to people like how to, the same way we develop operators, give other people that means of developing operators. There is a longer thread that was recently closed because of the approach in it I decided we probably didn't want to do, but it just describes the problem pretty clearly, which is just that, you know, externally we kind of tell people to develop an operator with this, you subscribe and you give this kind of hand-rolled observer there, but internally we have this create operator subscriber thing that we're doing. And we no longer actually have this operate function, but this bit here is kind of the important part. And it's not super easy to read. It's kind of code golf for the internals of RxJS. But what I want, the goal here is that anyone that's like, oh, I need a reference for how I should develop an operator should be able to come to our library, look at any operator and be like, oh, okay, well, that's how I would build my own operator. And you can't really do that right now. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion. And if you come to our discussions area and you look at these RFCs, like please do, because like getting these things discussed in public and getting people's opinion on them, like whether it's good or bad or, you know, thumbs up or whatever, gives us some signal as to whether or not we want to keep going that route. Other discussions that have been very, very important. Let's see if I can find the other one right here. That's probably marked as an agenda item. Let me find it. Yeah. So, oh man, is it closed? Did I close it? I don't think I closed it. Oh, boo. I should have had it up ahead of time. Sort by, filter, author. It is. Oh man, I must have closed it. Well, in any case, I know there's a pull request around it. So I'm going to go look at the pull requests. A new method for piping has been added. All right. So this is another thing that's a big deal that's coming up. There's a I guess it was an issue that was filed. Okay. Yeah. So there's this pattern that I see people do an awful lot, where what happens is inside of a concat map or something like that, they'll have a promise and they have to do from, because they want to use some RxJS operator on it. So they'll do from some promise or from some async iterable or whatever, from something, and then pipe it into existing operators. So that's one sort of issue. Another sort of issue is coming down the road as I'm starting to see more interest in adding like observable to various JavaScript runtimes and platforms. Those observable implementations, excuse me, will not have a pipe method, right? So if we wanted RxJS to work with other people's observables, we can't really rely on a pipe method being there. So we're not planning on removing the pipe method anytime soon. There's so much code out there around that. Like I wouldn't even deprecate it, honestly, not for quite some time. But the this Rx method provides like a new way to say, oh, I can pass an observable, or I can pass anything that could be an observable as the first argument to this Rx function, and then everything after that is pipeable operators. So like you just provide all the operators to that. And it means that you've got like a tree shakeable, terse way to deal with these observables. The other thing that is sort of related to this, like holistically, is we're still going to have this package here always in the same way that you are used to it. But we want to start publishing an @RxJS/observable package that only has the observable in it, right? And over time, it might be that, you know, if observable lands in a lot of platforms, doesn't have a pipe method anywhere, then we end up maybe having to deprecate it and tell people, hey, we want people to use RxJS, this RxJS function to use to pipe all of our operators together, or we end up using the observable from the platform or whatever. But that stuff's really far down the road. It's still pie in the sky. I've just seen some movement around it. In any case, we want to make sure that our library is a utility library to work with any observable that matches the appropriate contract. So going back to the package, if we have a package that just exports observable, it'll be more usable by people like Apollo GraphQL or other people that have their own internal like observable implementations. They'll be able to use a battle-hardened, fast, widely used instance of observable instead of having their own hand-rolled one. Because a lot of times their hesitancy to use it is that RxJS ships with all of these other tools, and they don't want to expose their users to all of those other tools, because sometimes people do bad things with operators, honestly. So trying to get the important bit of RxJS, which is the observable, out there in people's hands so they can use it instead of, again, hand-rolling one, which can come with its own set of problems. So that's kind of the high-level purpose for everything that I'm talking about here is RxJS 8. We should be in beta here in like a month or two. It's currently available. There's a lot of work being done on it. The main takeaways from it, RxJS 8 will be removing all of the long deprecated stuff. We're trying to get to where we're already to the point where we don't rely on the lift mechanism anymore. We're already to the point where should be anybody's observable will work with our operators as long as they adhere to the basic contract of being a subscribable or whatever. We're looking at trying to improve interoperability. We've got async iterables, it is an async iterable now, so you can subscribe to it in that manner. Async iterable support we already added in version 7, so if you're using the latest version of version 7, you'll be able to use that. But overall, just like trying to get these things to work with other similar things is a really important part about that. So again, removing deprecations, interop, and a little bit smaller size, and that's the big thing. And then obviously also having those broken out packages for people that only want observable or only want subjects, that sort of thing.
Are you done? Is that your I'm done?
That's
face?
it. Done.
So if you have any hot takes, questions, whatever it is, feel free to drop them inside the chat. Well, next up we have Mladen. Mladen has been doing some good stuff with the ducks, so wanted to see if you have any updates.
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. So I am in charge for the docs app of the RxJS, which actually is a fork of the Angular app, of the app that Angular team is using. Well, there is no so much updates that I wanted to share. It's just we had some issues in the past that we when we were because we were exporting operators from the two places. There were RxJS/operators, and we were exporting them from the top level RxJS spot, where we had this issue of docs app being broken. When we did that, after that, we introduced a pull request where we solved these issues, where basically all pull requests are now having docs app build running in the pipeline, where these issues shouldn't happen anymore. And that's the main thing that I think is important for the docs app. This thing actually doesn't publish the docs app. It just runs the build locally in the pipelines, and it breaks if there is something wrong with the pull request. And that's really it. And there is nothing much to say about that.
Is there any help that the team might need, or any easy?
Yeah, pull requests are always welcome. The pull requests that we have that are related to the docs, to the content of the docs, is always merged. Not always, but usually it's merged right away. So feel free to join us and
Nice.
contribute.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You heard from Mladen. All your pull requests are merged automatically. Just kidding. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. Moving on to Marco. Marco will give us updates about NGRX.
Yeah, NGRX with RxJS and Signal.
Yes.
Well, that will be an interesting story. Yeah, actually, if you already used NGRX, you probably know that RxJS is the main engine of NGRX for almost all the libraries, especially state management and view packages. For example, NGRX Store implements Redux pattern, but uses RxJS under the hood a lot. The same is for NGRX Effects Component Store, also that is used for the local state management. also holds its state in a replay subject and uses all the powers that RxJS provides. Right now, people who are doing Angular probably know about Angular signal RFCs and the plan of Angular team to introduce signals as reactive primitives in the Angular framework. For now, our plan is to, Brandon already opened a PR to integrate NGRX store with signals. We'll just expose another method called select signal instead of select that will actually return a signal instead of observable. But under the hood, at least for now, we will still use RxJS for the NGRX store. Soon we will also raise a PR for the component store. And yeah, we will see how it will go in the future. We will not change the implementation under the hood, at least until signals are in developer preview. But in the future, how I see NGRX, it probably be like a combination of signals and RxJS. We can use still signals to hold the state in our application and to take advantage of performance improvements that will be provided by the Angular framework when we use signals to display values in the template, of course, and to still use RxJS to handle synchronous side effects.
Oh, thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the chat because we will start the kind of like discussion in just a little bit. Moshe, I don't know if you have any updates.
Yeah, I think Ben got to really the important ones.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, every couple of months, I just try to re-implement the pipe operator with TypeScript, but until we can get that, anything really of note.
Oh, Ben, you're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah, I don't think I was saving it for Moshe a little bit, but we do have some improvements coming in version 8 for the typings for pipe, which is that all of our pipe operators, including new all of our pipe methods and functions, including this new Rx function, will work with like any unary functions, right? Where before our types wouldn't do that. Like before it required you to be like, oh, I've got a unary function that goes from, or an operator function, basically it goes from observable to observable. The implementation didn't require that. It only just the types did. And now that's not the case. Now only the first thing in there has to accept an observable, but if it returned a number, the next function in there could go from number to something else. Like it doesn't, in version 8, it'll be agnostic of that. So if you wanted to make an operator, if you will, a pipeable function that was like, I'm subscribing in here, you could totally do that and just return a subscription and it should work.
Cool. Let's see okay. So going to some of the questions that we have in the chat. Let's see. Okay, how about this one? Could you talk more in a general way? What's the state of RxJS today in times of Angular upcoming signals? Should not be associated with Angular so much anymore.
So I think that Marco kind of hit on that a little bit. I can tell you that there's a few things about it. Is a lot of Angular people I think that RxJS is mostly using Angular, and I've found that at least when I've done workshops in recent history, it's been majority of React people in there. Also, if you just look at the download stats, there's like, I don't even know, 20 times more downloads of RxJS than there are of Angular core. So there's a lot of people using it not in Angular. But that said, like the signals implementation, like signals and observables have two different use cases really, which are like observables are totally push based. Observables can represent any event updating any data, right? Like anything. And signals, on the other hand, are they push and then you pull. So they push and say, hey, something's changed. And then the framework or whoever wants to consume this has to schedule something that says, hey, now I'm ready to pull these values. And whenever it pulls those values, there's this computation that needs to be done. So it goes through the tree of all the things that have been updated and updates them. So it computes properties and whatever. So it only computes them one time. And then it actually pulls the values and updates them. So there's this kind of like this weird asynchronous dead zone that has to happen in there. And the way that Angular's signals in particular are implemented, they're doing some clever things with synchronous shared global state, where they're detecting like, oh, you set up a computed property, so I'm going to set a variable in memory, and then I'm going to synchronously execute the handler of that computed property to see what signals you're calling. Now, if you do the same thing with an effect, it does that as well. But if you try to wrap or like close over in some asynchronous callback, where you're trying to pull something out of that signal, you're going to have a problem, because it won't be able to detect that signal was executed and know that it's in there. So there's some weird nuance in there, kind of like React Hooks has, if anyone here is familiar with that, has some weird nuance where you have to make sure all the hooks are called in the same order and they can't be called inside of an if statement and those sorts of things. Like signals are going to have that, and observables are never going to have that. The Angular signals, they might be able to get out of having that with some compiler trickery. Maybe. I don't know if that still works in every case. There's probably still going to be some cases where that would not work, but to my knowledge, they're not doing that yet. So there's going to be like, if you want to synchronously update your view, signals are going to work really well for that. You could have like, oh, I'm going to get this observable fires, and when it fires, I update some signal, and that updates my view. I think where people are going to trip a little bit is if they're like, oh, I'm going to have a signal represent HTTP with nothing else in it. Like there's no cancellation. It's not really the right type for that sort of thing. It's this event, or like signals to represent mouse movements probably doesn't make sense. The other thing that people might trip over a little bit is if they get too heavy, if they try to do, and they do this, people already do silly things with this in observables, but effectively, if you have a bunch of computed properties, it's the same thing as having an observable that's got scan, and you're saving state in each one of those computed properties. So if you're not using the value that you're computing, like you're only computing it so you can compute something else, it's debatable. You're going to be keeping those stuff in memory. It's probably not a great practice unless maybe you're using it in 2 spots or something. Then there's an argument to be made there. But it's going to be the same thing. The real concern I have is that people are going to be like, oh, they said this is reactive. And and I say this like with some sadness, the atrocities I've seen people commit with RxJS operators, and the fact that people think that that's how reactive programming should go. I'm a little concerned that they use the word reactivity with signals, and it is reactive, it is, but that people are going to be like, oh, I'm going to build signal operators. It's going to be great. And there's going to be libraries upon libraries of like debounced signals and other craziness coming out with like not much thought about the implications of those, or how easy it is to like follow a bunch of, disconnected properties across multiple files, like as opposed to, having something that's kind of all in one chain. I don't know. Like I think they're both going to have a place. I think that there's probably going to be some like really heavy-handed, signals, all the things stuff that happens for a little while.
Just like the RxJS, all the things.
Yeah. And yeah, realistically, I think that there's a lot of folks too that they worked on teams where people just RX'd everything to death, and then, and maybe did a bad job of it. And then it puts a bad taste in other developers' mouths, and they're like, oh, RxJS is the problem. And it's like, well, it didn't type itself. So I don't really think that, that was the problem, but you might see some of the same things come out of signals.
Like React's the problem. It has bad performance. Let's migrate to Angular. Angular's the problem. Let's migrate to Quick. Quick's the problem. Question for Marco. Why is NGRX changing to signals too?
As you probably know, Hans, NGRX is a group of library that is used in Angular. I mean, primarily Angular. Maybe someone is using out of Angular, but NGRX needs to be in accordance with Angular changes. For now, as I said, we will just introduce integration point for signals. And the main reason is to be able to take advantage of performance improvements that will Angular team introduce with a new, let's call it, new change detection strategy. So if you, maybe you know how it works now, when something changed in our component, for example, the entire component tree will be checked with default change detection strategy, for example. And with signals, the idea is to get rid of zone.js and also to introduce a new, let's call it, local change detection strategy that will check only at the view level when something happens. So not at the component level, component template, but at the view level.
Yeah,
So
that's a smart thing to do. Like, and just for people's context here, if anyone here has used like Vue 3, if they have their own library for RxJS in Vue 3 that they support, and like at the end of the day, what you're doing with Vue 3 effectively is you're subscribing to observables to do things with Rx if you need to use Rx for something, and then you put it into a signal that then updates the view. Like that's how you would use it with Vue. That's how you'd use it with Solid. Like, the integration point that's provided for updating a view in upcoming versions of Angular will be these signals for change detection purposes to make things faster. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Pavel or Powell, wherever, depending on where you come from, has some fun questions. One for Mladen. Thoughts on including recipes in docs? Or is it too big a potential of noise and arguably quality?
I'm all for it, though we don't have any plans to do it. Our GitHub issues are only reserved for the RxJS core, basically for the library. Therefore, we don't have any issue open that is addressing this issue. But if you have any ideas, you can feel free to reach me using Twitter. And
Ben, is there no way we can change that? Like, can we somehow have space for this somewhere?
Space for what in particular? Like adding recipes for how to do different things to the docs?
No, I think like to track. It sounded like Milana was saying like there's what were you saying? You're saying like there's not issues in related to this because it's more for RxJS core.
They can definitely file issues there around it. Like, all right, so just to be clear, like I think that RxJS has been around for 12 years or something like that. The current library as it exists has evolved over my tenure over the last like 7 years. There aren't a ton of issues that come up that are like really high quality, like, oh my God, this is a huge raging bug and we need to fix it. Or like that, there's not a lot of ways that we can merge map things. So I think a good chunk of the issues coming up, if they're documentation related, is probably appropriate for our issues section. Like, by all means, file your issues with documentation there, or file pull requests and help Mladen out. Mladen is officially our czar of documentation. Like, in our core team meetings, we've talked about it, and I've basically told him like, hey, like if you want to update, there's a difference between updating the documentation part of a project like this and updating the core, like the library, and publishing it, right? Like, you publish a library, it affects millions of people. You publish the web, and it could technically affect 1 million people that come and look at it, but like the difference is, it's like, oh, I screwed up something, you can just redeploy it or roll it back or whatever, and it's pretty safe. So he's been doing a bang up job getting the documentation fixed. He's welcome to implement whatever he needs to implement in order to get that.
Well, I think like, Mladen, do you like envision something where it's like, oh, let's create issues for, every single like every single operator that needs an example or so, you know.
No, I wanted to say that it's just like we don't have like an issue open for the ideas like this one.
Like to create new ideas, like
yeah,
it's almost like a roadmap. Ooh, I wonder if one of the issues, because like we have an RxJS, you know, like roadmap to RxJS 8, right? Can we do like roadmap for the documentation?
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Would be nice.
That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, you could even start a discussion section or anything. Like, there's the world's your oyster. You can do what you need to do with it.
Yeah.
Okay, Mladen.
I'll do
20.
something.
You have 24 hours.
Starting
checking the
now.
repo. No, but I mean, I think that would be amazing, right? It's like, what would we want the documentation to look like? What is our roadmap to be able to get there? And that would provide some guidance and some opportunity, I think, for people to contribute more. I think RxJS is a very difficult library to contribute to. So thank you, Pavel, for bringing that up. So I know I'm going through these questions, but like, do the panelists, like, as we're having these discussions, have anything to add before I move on?
I don't think that I mentioned that. I think the last when you talk about like that RxJS is hard to contribute to, I think since version 7 and especially in this upcoming version 8, it should become a lot easier for people to contribute to, because the code is much smaller and more simplified than it used to be. The only area of real pain in RxJS, and it's still pain, is our schedulers. And just to talk about that really quickly, like, our schedulers have been rife with weird bugs that are very, very hard to fix because they use a lot of inheritance and weird trickery inside of them that was necessary back in older runtimes whenever I first started working on this. And the plan is to continue to support those schedulers through this next version 8. But I want to introduce some new schedulers that are much simpler, and then have both living side by side, but kind of deprecate those other ones. Now, that's not going to happen anytime soon because we don't even have the new schedulers. But the plan is to try to eliminate that over the next, like, 1 or 2 major version changes. Like, at least provide, here's new ones that work better, a little bit more efficient, easier for us to maintain, solve some of the weird bugs with the other ones, that sort of thing, and then deprecate the old ones and try to get people onto a newer API. So other than that, it reminded me to talk about that. We were talking about, like, it's hard to contribute. It should be much, much easier to contribute, especially as version 8 evolves.
I think the contributions was more like, you need to have so much more context, to be able to actually contribute. But like, can you give good examples of issues that are open that people could contribute to?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit in that last bit for me.
Do you have like previously, I feel like RxJS, or even currently, RxJS is like hard to contribute to because it's like you're solving, it's not like small little changes here and there, right? Like you kind of have to have a little bit of context to be able to contribute. But if that's changing, like, can you give us some examples of, let's say issues that are open right now that might be easier to contribute to, as you're saying?
I mean, the big thing, it's sort of like I was saying, like the odds that someone's going to need to contribute to, let's say, like the simplest and most obvious case would be like the map or filter operator anytime soon, are so minuscule. It's crazy. Like there's the problem. One of the problems with contributing to it at this point is, I mean, merge map works. It's proven to work at massive scale right now. Like, there's been no bugs being reported. Like, those sorts of, the only real bugs that kind of are left are things that are, kind of gnarly things that we can't really fix about scheduling without breaking something else, kind of thing, or that sort of thing. So like, we've had some contributions, a lot of contributions from like people that aren't on the core team around deprecation removal and that sort of thing. So like if you went and you looked at the roadmap and saw like, oh, these are all things that we want to do in RxJS, one of the things was removing deprecated APIs. And there was a couple people, one in particular, that just went crazy with doing all that work for me, which was fantastic because that was a lot of busy work that I would have had to go through and do, like removing all of those deprecated APIs. So those sorts of contributions are things that might be easier low-hanging fruit for people if you go in and look. I mean, realistically, though, the bigger we're at a stage where it's the unsexy work that needs to be done, and Mladen's doing a lot of that, which is documentation. If people want to contribute recipes, like be my guest. Like the library itself is a very small kitchen. Like it's not like it's a bunch of tools that we're working on. This isn't a big framework. This isn't like an enormous library for doing anything. It's a library for dealing with one type, really, or one or two types. So the needs in the actual code space are much lighter than the needs in the spaces around it, like whether it's build tooling or documentation's a bigger deal, or those sorts of things are going to make a larger impact, larger difference to the project than any amount of bug fixes that you could do in it. And it's just purely because of the size of the library. And like I said, it's kind of a small kitchen space to work in.
Cool. Any other comments from the panel?
I think we had previously asked people to come to change our tests to use the run mode. But I think that's finished now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's either finished or it's very close to being finished. I don't know. Like there's some work there to do to get all of our entire, like, so all of our library is running on Prettier, but all of the tests are not. It's like they're like imperatively at the top. There's a comment to enable Prettier or not on some of the tests. So like I think there's probably some stuff there. Honestly, if you just went through the tests, like some of the tests probably are testing duplicate things, or like every single time I go through and look at some of those tests, I'm like, this test, I don't know if this test is testing what I think it's testing, or if it's just hard to read, and I'll end up poking at those sorts of things. But going through and looking at that sort of stuff can't hurt. But yeah, it's again, it's one of those things where the code area of it is hard to contribute to, I guess.
Cool. Is there an RFC for the new schedulers? Joshua has a lot of opinions and he needs to share them somewhere.
No, but we can start one. It's one of those things where I want to try to knock out new schedulers like mid version 8, because they'd be a new feature that's non-breaking, and try to focus on more breaking or like broad impacting changes in version 7. But we can definitely start the RFC and start talking about it. There's a lot of ideas. Like some of the ideas are like, what if it, instead of having a schedule thing, had like a schedule once and schedule interview, like interval, I'm sorry, two methods, or and so on and so forth. So like trying to come up with those APIs, we need to define what some of the problems are with the current schedulers and talk about it.
By the way, did you think about names for the new schedulers?
Mladen. I was going to name one of them Mladen.
His name is Signals.
The other one's name is Moshe. Every time it next, it sends an email to one of these two, and they have to approve it and respond. No, like it would probably be something that was in line with the current stuff, so people knew where to look. I mean, honestly, if I was going to rename anything in RxJS, I would rename behavior subjects, because I hate the name behavior subject. But I tried that once, and it was shot down. So, What are you going to do? Although if we land the new RX method, that'll end a lot of people using from. So like that ends another name that I wasn't terribly fond of, but exists for historical purposes. So
I have a question. How can you tell from the RxJS library, like who is using it? Like from a technology standpoint, right? I mean, I know you're saying like, okay, for Angular, you can kind of see that like the number, I think you're saying that the number of downloads for RxJS dwarfs the number of like Angular downloads.
oh yeah, by a lot. It's like 3 million a week to like 46 million a week or something like that. Like
right.
It's a lot.
So like who's using RxJS?
All right. So the only way to know something like that would be like go into some software that you use a lot of and find their licenses, because they have to keep the licenses information. And like if you go in, and if you go into like PlayStation, you can go in there and you have to scroll and scroll and scroll because it's all in alphabetical order and they don't really care how searchable it is, right? But you'll see RxJS is in there. Along with a lot of other stuff like, Redux and all sorts of other things that they've got inside of PlayStation's UI. But yeah, I mean, the major way to know.
We can't say like globally, like, of the X million, 20 million are using Vue.js and whatever.
No, I mean, I tried to add some tracking code to it, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. Okay. I love Hans. I love Pavel. Love Parasocial coming in, hanging out with us, making some jokes. But Hans asks a good question, and I'm sure a lot of people, I mean, we get this question a lot. Is there an RxJS community?
Like online, there's a Gitter. I don't really I don't really go to the Gitter. I know the Gitter's pretty active, but I haven't frequented it very often. There's kind of a secret Slack that we all like chat in from time to time.
But I think that's more for contributors. So like,
I think
if you're contributing to RxJS and you're like, man, I need to talk to the core team, there's a great, Slack that we can add you to for sure. You can just DM one of us. But what about everyone else? Like, does anybody else lurk somewhere?
I don't know. I'm not sure if anyone started like a Discord or anything like that. There's a Reddit community, but whoever's the admin of it like abandoned it forever ago. So I tried to take ownership of it, and that went nowhere.
No other comments from the panelists. Y'all don't hang out somewhere. Okay. Yeah. So maybe that's good feedback for us. We need to start like an RxJS Discord and manage it a little bit better. I love that. That's a great project.
That's right up Tracy's alley.
I know. That's how the doc started. It's like, we need some docs. What do we do? Okay, so good point, Hans. And we should absolutely start that. And then we'll wire it up directly to Ben's phone, so he'll get notifications like 24/7. It's gonna be amazing. Good plan. I guess this is a fun comment because I think I think a lot of us kind of like live in the front end world, right? So Ben, I know you've recently been working on like a lot of backend stuff related to RxJS.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Oh, sure. I mean, like the RxJS, it's the same sort of use cases you'd see in the front end, where like in Node, it's frequently used with like large amounts of streaming data. Now, on the back end, you've got back pressure concerns that are a little bit different than you would in the front end, where like on the front end, it's kind of like it's the terminus of like what's going on. So you might have, from database to like the user seeing it, there might be like 2 or 3 backend services and then a UI, and that's where they see it. At that point up at the front, you can just push things and update, and it's generally okay in most cases. However, in backend services where maybe you are processing a lot of data or whatever, back pressure is a little bit more of a concern. And since RxJS is pure push, the patterns there are going to be a little bit different, to where you might have like a subject that you say, I'm going to next the number of records I want into it, or something like that, 5,000. And so it goes up to the top and says, give me 5,000 based off of that subject. And then concat maps into it, and you get 5,000. And when it gets all the way down to the bottom of where it's done processing that chain, side effect is next into the subject again, give me another 5,000. And that goes back up to the top and goes back down through. So like, there are uses for it, and there are patterns for it. Other things that I've seen it used for are like the backend side of WebSocket connections and WebSocket management and that sort of thing. It's pretty good for those sorts of things too. And now that we have really strong interop with async iterables, I think you're probably going to see those sorts of things a little bit more also in Node. So. But yeah, it does get used a lot for backends. Even as far back as when I worked at Netflix, working on Falcor. Falcor front end weirdly didn't have any Rx in it, but the back end did, because we were using expand for traversing like that asynchronous graph, that asynchronous tree of data on the back end.
I'm actually curious if. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually curious if how much interop there is between node streams and Rx, if operators could be used like in object mode or anything like that, if there's any, if that was explored at any point.
I don't actually know. My understanding is that node streams don't implement async iterable yet, but are going to. If they do, or when they do, RxJS will just work as far as that. You'd be able to literally return a node stream from a concat map or whatever, and it would just do what it needed to do. So yeah, I don't actually know the answer to that offhand. It would take a little bit of experimentation.
Okay, well, if you're not using RxJS for your backend, this is the signals for you to start doing it.
So funny. So funny.
Good to see Aaron joining. Good to see you, Aaron.
I'm just glad you didn't go anywhere I would have went with the backend joke. So there's that.
Hans said, why did Moshe not bring Nicholas? Because it's really, really late for him. So yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes, I mean, even for the core team meetings, it's like 4 a.m. for him.
Yeah.
So,
he's also upside down. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's in Australia.
Difficult from a time zone perspective. Okay, panelists, any like other comments or anything like that? Like, do we want to talk more about TypeScript?
No, I think Ben kind of we spoke about the pipe and how that works very generically. So I think we're covered with that. And yeah, if there's any issues with any type systems or anything like that, I'm always I jump on those, and so always happy to help out with anything like that. Okay,
well, here's a fun one. Do we have plans for better debugging in RxJS?
So like the better debugging is going to come a little bit with simplifying our code base. It's going to help with that. Realistically, with any push-based library that you could build, you're going to have the whole thing of like call stacks where it's like next, or, anonymous function, and so on. If a better debugging story comes at all, it's going to come probably from the platform. There's been some proposals out there for ways to kind of how do I put this? Like mark a chain or create a token that you can thread through a chain to see where things have gone or how things have gone. I'll have to dig up that proposal, but like, again, it's just a proposal. The other thing is if observable lands in, let's say, Chrome proper or Node or somewhere like that, then all of a sudden they'll be able to hook DevTools into it a little bit more directly like they can with promises. But at the end of the day, the debugging story around them, it has improved since the olden days a little bit, but you still are going to have these big call stacks, which honestly, your best bet is probably to black box RxJS in some of those cases and make your life a little easier when you're debugging. But yeah, that's what we've got for debugging, unfortunately.
Cool. Oh, here we go. Remember when the pipe operator was going to land in JS soon?
Yeah, it's at stage 2 now, and it's some crazy. It's based off of Hack, which is a PHP dialect based like that Facebook made, as opposed to F# or any other language's pipeline operator. I've got very strong opinions about why that's really dumb. Right? Like, for one, how many people here have used Hack? Crickets. Oh, that's great. How many people here have actually heard of Hack? Well, crickets again. That's kind of a telling sign right there that you're basing it off a language that nobody uses. But there is a stage 2 proposal for the pipeline operator. The way that it works is basically you do a pipe and then it gives you a token that represents whatever's on the left-hand side of the pipeline operator that you're then supposed to use on the right-hand side of the pipeline operator. But I'm not sure if it works in closures or anywhere else. Like, it's kind of, there's some weird trickiness to that, as opposed to it working with a currently pipeable function, which is what we're using, a pipeable function. So I don't know, like there might be better luck just adding a pipe function to like Chrome or V8 or something, as opposed to trying to land something in JavaScript. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that the current pipeline operator, the way that it exists, dies on the vine, so it leaves room for a better pipeline operator someday when there's a changing of the guards in the TC39. But and I know that's super mean, and if some people are in the TC39, they're going to hear that and they're going to be very offended or upset. But it's a proposal. I've got opinions. They've got opinions. We disagree. I think it's a shame the way that the proposal is out there. I'm hoping that it just kind of stays at stage 2 and never advances. But like many things that go through the TC39, it's kind of outside of the realm of the control of the people, as it were.
Anything else?
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think that's basically it. But I think big takeaways from today, outside of all the exciting updates that are happening in RxJS State, and the scheduler stuff, which Ben has decided will happen very soon, right, Ben? And putting up the RC for the new schedulers, as Mladen has free reign to basically create some sort of roadmap for RxJS docs. So that'll be really fun. It'll be a really great way for more people to start contributing. When we started the docs project, that was like the best way to get new contributors in. So it'll be very exciting for that. Keep us updated on that. And then figuring out how we can activate the RxJS community, right? Via Discord or something like that. So definitely excited about figuring out what we're going to do there as well. Yeah. All these people are on Twitter, so you can hang out with them. They're nice. You can slide into their DMs, ask them questions.
It's true. I try to answer every question I get in my DMs. I really do. Like, sometimes it takes me a while to get to them because they'll go into that DM purgatory thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's like there's like your DMs, and then there's like another set of hidden DMs, and then inside of that there's another set of spam. But there's a request, and then there's also a spam one.
Yeah.
So it's like there's like 3 layers deep, and but I do try.
Yeah. And again, thanks everyone for being a part of the RxJS community, contributing. If you do want an Rx workshop, somebody did request that a little bit further up. But yeah, it was Hans. Thank you, Hans. It did not stop. It's just, you know, if you need it, let us know. Feel free to message me on Twitter at LadyLead and we can get it set up. Awesome. Thanks all. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.